اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك الأثام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن تزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع متضرع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد للذنوب غافرا ولا لقبائح ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي الخبيث بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرحت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من خبيه سترته وكم من فاده من البلاء أقلته وكم من ثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم أعظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وخسرت بي أمالي وقدت بي أغلالي وهبسني النفع بعد آمالي وقدتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومتعالي يا سيدي فاسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك الدعاء سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فهلي وساعتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي ومولاي ربي، من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اتبعت في هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وسدوا على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي في قضاؤك والزمن حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا محترفا. لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا محفزا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي، يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي. هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد ما طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واهتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق الترافي ودوائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أن تكرم من أن تزيي من ربيته، أو تبعد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة، وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذهنة. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكسوه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته، فكيف احتمالي للبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي، فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أزج وأبكي، لعليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته، فلئن سيرتني في العقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فابني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وابني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لزجن إليك بين أهل هذا الجيج العاملين ولو صرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولو نادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية أعمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها من مخالفته وذاقت عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يزج إليك زجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك ورأفتك ورحمتك أم كيف تهلم النار وهو يحمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تشجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فصدك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تهذيب جاهديك وقضيت به من إقلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملاها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدعا وتطولت بالنعم متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فاسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل خبي نصرته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أحلنته أخفيته أو أزحرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بذري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه مولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جواره واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك الدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في مبادرين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارد ومن كادني فكد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني أثرتي واغفر لي ذلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي الدعاء وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه الدواء وذكره الشفاء يا من اسمه الدواء وذكره الشفاء يا من اسمه الدواء وذكره الشفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من راس ماله الرجاء وصلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وفل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة من أئمة الميامين من أهله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. तबीयत ठीक है? नहीं तबीयत ठीक है? नहीं پانی نہیں پانی اگر زحمت ہے تو وہ ویڈیو نہیں گئی. ہاں ٹھیک ہے. نہیں میں ابھی شروع کر رہا ہوں بس. علیکم السلام. I'll start. اللهم صل. اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. الحمد للہ الذی لا یبلغ مدحۃ القائلون ولا یسینا معه العدون ولا یؤدی حقه المجتہدون الذی لا یدرکہ بہد الہمم ولا ینالہ غوث الفتن الذی لیس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت محدود ولا اجل ممدود فطر الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالصخور ميدان أرض ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيبنا وحبيب رب العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we're all aware, the Quran is a very deep and knowledgeable book, and when it comes to the Quran, there's a reason that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, there's a reason that the Aimma alayhim salam have said that the Quran isn't for anyone to do the tafsir of. There is a reason that they have said that anyone who does the tafsir of the Quran bil-rai, meaning anyone who does tafsir of the Quran with their own opinion, then may the lanat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels and the mu'mineen be upon that person. So from this narration we understand that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam have strictly put a border around who can do tafsir. They've strictly put a border around how tafsir can be done. They've said what? That anyone that does tafsir bil-rai, anyone that does tafsir based on their opinion, then the lanat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels and the mu'mineen be upon them. That means what? That means that it is not up to you and I to do the tafsir of the Quran. It's not up to you and me to give the explanation of the Quran. It's only and only up to who? Rasikhun fil ilm. Those people that are endowed with knowledge. Those people that have complete knowledge. Do you and I have complete knowledge where we can do tafsir of the Quran? No. The knowledge that we do have is so little. Based on that knowledge, what do? We start saying, in my opinion. You see, the way this world works, or the country that you live in, here in the United States, the type of government we have, you have one part of the government that makes the laws. You have another part of the government that finalizes the laws. And you have another part of the government that interprets the laws. This is the type of government that is set up here. Why isn't it permissible for the people that are making the laws to interpret the laws? Why is it that we have people that are interpreting the laws? We have this judicial system where they interpret the laws that are made by Congress. Why can't Congress themselves interpret the laws? They'll make the laws, yes, but then when it comes to the ins and outs about whether or not this law is unconstitutional or whether or not it conflicts with another law or amendment in the Constitution, Congress isn't well versed in it. Who are? The judges. Who are? The Supreme Court. That means what? That means when it comes to the Constitution, it's the judges that will interpret the Constitution. Why? Because they're the ones that know the most about it, or they're supposed to know the most about it, correct? But when it comes to the Quran, there's a little bit of a difference. A little bit of a difference. What's the difference? The difference is that you and I cannot interpret the Quran even if we know how to recite it. You and I cannot interpret the Quran even if we know it was revealed 1400 years ago. Why? Because this language isn't the language of you and I. This is the language of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The language of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is only going to be interpreted by the messenger that He sends. It's only going to be interpreted by the people that He's chosen to represent Him on this earth. These are His words, so He decides who will represent Him in this world. This is the reason that we have in our school of thought, imamat. Why? Because that connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it continues. That connection is not lost. This is the reason that we say in our school of thought that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends wahi on the imams. The wahi is not the same as for the prophets. Yes, that's absolutely true. But he still sends wahi on the imams. What kind of wahi is this? This is wahi in the form of ilham. This is wahi, and we'll get to it, because the verse that I want to do tafsir of today is Surah Al-Zilzal. Surah Al-Zilzal, and this is the surah that I started this lecture off with, very short surah. And everyone knows the last verse or two verses of the surah where Allah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ Everyone has memorized these last two verses of this surah. They might not know that this is from Surah Al-Zilzal. That's fine. But everyone's memorized. What do these verses mean? Anyone that has done an atom's weight of good will see it. And anyone that has done an atom's weight of evil will see it. What does this mean? And this is what I want to get to. Surah Al-Zilzal, to begin with, the Holy Prophet, he says, anyone that is habitually reciting Surah Al-Zilzal, meaning that they constantly recite Surah Al-Zilzal, one, they won't die because of earthquake. Surah Al-Zilzal means the earthquake. And this is a specific earthquake that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about in this surah. The Holy Prophet, he says, anyone that is habitually in reciting Surah Al-Zilzal, they will not die of or because of an earthquake. Two, anyone that habitually recites Surah Al-Zilzal, when they're about to leave this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sends an angel down to this person. He sends an angel down to this person. And that angel, what does he do? That angel, it sits right by this person's head. And when Malak al-Maut comes to take out the soul of this person, this angel, he tells Malak al-Maut, he's telling the angel of death, oh, angel of death, this is a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be careful in how you take out his soul. The angel of death, this is not me, this is Al-Burhan, fi tafsir al-Quran, Sayyid Hashim Barani, he has the narration. He says what? He says that angel, he tells the angel of death, be careful in how you take out his soul. This is a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was habitual in reciting this surah. What does this mean? That means that anyone that habitually recites Surah Al-Zilzal, 8 verses, anyone who recites these words or these 8 verses every day becomes a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Becomes a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This angel, when the angel of death is trying to take the soul out, comes to take the soul out, he tells the angel of death, be careful the way you take out his soul. This is a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angel of death looks at that angel and he tells him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded me not to take out his soul until he himself tells me to do it. Do not take out this friend of mine, do not take out his soul until he himself commands you to do it. And he is angel of death. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told me to do whatever he wants me to do. If you want the angel of death to do what you want him to do, Surah Al-Zilzal, recite it every day. Recite it every day. The narration, it goes on to say that the angel of death, what does he do? He sits by this person. He sits by this person. He sits next to this person. And what does he do? He shows this person his place in heaven. He shows this person his place in heaven. When this person sees his place in heaven, that's when he tells the angel of death, I want you to take my soul now. And when he takes his soul, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he sends 70,000 angels to accompany that soul to heaven. Look at how much barakah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed in what? 8 verses. 8 verses of the Quran. 70,000. The angel of death himself, He says what? He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself has told me to be careful. And when he takes out his soul, this person who's constantly recited the Surah Al-Zilzal, his soul will be taken out in ease. A lot of people, when they're dying, you hear about it. You hear about it where what? They're yelling when their soul is being taken out, when they're dying. You hear about it that they're crying when their soul is being taken out. But here, this person whose soul is being taken out, they die in peace. 70,000 angels are accompanying this person or this soul towards heaven. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To begin with, these verses, who do these verses apply to? Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends an angel to accompany this person? Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends 70,000 angels to accompany this person's soul? You have to know the interpretation of this surah. Who does it apply to? Think about the surah. Look at how it goes. The surah itself, how does it start? Iza zulzilatul arzu zilzalaha. Surah Zilzal, meaning the quakening, the earthquake, correct? This earthquake, the narrations, they state that this earthquake is the last earthquake that will happen before the end of time, one. And I'll get to other narrations that are in books like Tafsir al-Burhan and other books of tafsir that we have. When the earth is shaken, when this earth is shaken with a violent shaking, when this earth is shaken with a violent shaking, وَأَخْرَجَتُ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا. When it's shaken with this violent shaking, what will it do? It brings forth the burdens that were placed on it. It brings forth the burdens that were placed on it. وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا. وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا. Mankind will say, what is wrong with you? What is this? What is this? Narration from Lady Zahra sallallahu alaihi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Lady Zahra sallallahu, she says, and you have to remember that Lady Zahra alaykum salam, she lived a maximum of 6 months after the passing away of the Holy Prophet. She lived a maximum of 6 months. So this narration is from Lady Zahra, which means that this incident happened within 6 months of the Holy Prophet passing away. She says that when Abu Bakr came and became Khalifa, there was an earthquake in Medina. Everyone was scared, and it wouldn't stop shaking. It wouldn't stop shaking. And when it wouldn't stop shaking, they all came to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Look at the verse of the Quran. The verse of the Quran is Iza zulzilatul arzu zilzalaha. When the earth shakes violently, wa akhrajatul ardu athqalaha. When this earth, it throws out the burdens, correct? Wa qala al-insanu ma laha. I want to focus on this. And then the next verse after this. Wa qala al-insanu ma laha. Man, he says, what is wrong? Lady Zahra, she says, they all came to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he didn't know what was going on outside. Meaning that the earthquake is happening, Amir al-Mu'mineen is at home comfortably. Everyone outside is worried that the whole world is ending. Amir al-Mu'mineen is at home. When they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, okay. They go to a place. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on top of a hill. He puts his hand on the ground and he says, Ma laha. Amir al-Mu'mineen puts his hand on the ground and he says, what is wrong with you? The Quran itself is saying what? وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا. Man says to it, what is wrong with you? Who is this man that the Quran is speaking about? Who is this man that the Quran is speaking about? 1. 2, narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen himself. When he was going for Siffin, in Iraq, there was another earthquake that happened. Amir al-Mu'mineen did the same thing. He puts his hand on the ground and he says, Malaha. When he said Malaha, it stopped. In Medina, the same thing happened. But in Medina, there was a voice that everyone heard. And that voice said that I am going to tell about everything that happened. I'm going to tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about everything that happened. Towards Siffin, when Amir al-Mu'mineen, alaykum salam. Towards Siffin, when Amir al-Mu'mineen does the same thing, there was no voice. There was no voice. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, if it was that violent of an earthquake, it would definitely have answered me. It would definitely have answered me. The way that it answered Amir al-Mu'mineen in Medina, it would have answered me here also. Correct? وَأَخْرَجَتُ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. On that day shall this earth tell about what happened on it. بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. Because why? Your Lord, Awha. What does Awha mean? Awha is a conjugation of the word wahi. This verse is saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send wahi on this earth. Or I should put it a different way. Not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. The Lord sends wahi on this earth. Lord sends wahi on this earth. Sometimes in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? That He sent wahi on a bee. Sometimes in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that He sent wahi on prophets. Sometimes in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He sent wahi on who? The friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He sent wahi on all of these things. You might say, well, all of these things, they're all creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're all creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This earth cannot think, yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends wahi on it for it to start speaking. Wahi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can send wahi to whatever and whoever He chooses to. So when we Shias, we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends wahi on the Imams, what's the problem? If He can send wahi on earth and make it speak, why can't He send wahi on Amir al-Mu'mineen? Why can't He send wahi on Imam Hussein? Why can't He send wahi on Imam Hassan? Why can't He send wahi on any of them? When you don't understand what you're reading, then your mind, it becomes very narrow. When you start interpreting the Quran yourself, then you lose sight of the meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended in His verses. You and I don't know what He intended. That's the reason that He sent representatives, so those representatives can tell us what He intended. Why? Because they're in constant connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you don't have that wahi, then how can you be in constant connection? That wahi itself is a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's the one who puts that hand and he says, Malaha. And then it goes on. Yawma izin yasdurun nasu ashtatan liyaraw a'malahum. There'll come a day when man shall come forth and they will be able to see their deeds. They'll be able to see their deeds. فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ. And whoever has done an atom's weight of good shall see it. And whoever has done an atom's weight of evil shall see it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When it comes to this, whoever has done an atom's weight of good, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. He says that when it comes to this verse of whoever has done an atom's weight of good shall see it, if he is from the inhabitants of the fire and he had done a good deed of the weight of an atom, if he is from the inhabitants of the fire. Meaning what? Meaning that if this person is someone that is going to go to hell, and if this person has done even an atom's weight of good, if this person has done an atom's weight of good, we'll see it on the day of judgment, and he will regret. He will regret that he had not done more. He will regret. 1, 2. He will regret that that goodness that he did was not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. A lot of the times, you ask, what will happen to all of these people that do so much good in the world? What are they doing good for? Are they doing good for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or are they doing good just to be known in the world? Are they doing good for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or are they doing good just to be famous? What are they doing good for? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he said that people who are going to go to hell, when they see their atom's weight of good, they'll even wish that they had not done it, or they'd wish that they had done it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not for the sake of fame, not for the sake of getting something in return. Why? Because when you do it for the sake of fame, then you have taken fame as your God. When you do it for the sake of money, then you have taken money as your God. Instead of doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now you have brought fame to this level. You have brought money to this level. This is why the ulama, they say that this is shirk. This is why Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam is saying, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. This is why the Imam, he's saying that they're doing it for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fame is other than Allah. Money is other than Allah. Correct? And then he goes on to say, Imam, he goes on to say, and he who has done an atom's weight of evil shall see it. What does this mean? And if this person who has done an atom's weight of evil is someone who goes to paradise, he would see that evil on the day of judgment, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive him for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive him. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive this person who has done an atom's weight of good? And why will, or an atom's weight of evil, I'm sorry. Why will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive that person that has done an atom's weight of evil? Why doesn't He forgive that person that is, or why doesn't He reward that person that has done an atom's weight of good? And why is He going to punish this person that has done an atom's weight of evil? Because of the reason. The person who's going to go to hell, he did that atom's weight of good for what? For someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means that he brought someone at the same status of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this person that did an atom's weight of evil, he didn't do it because he brought something else at the status of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Imams have said, the people, or in the du'as also, we commit evil or we commit bad deeds. Why? Because in that moment, we forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We forget that there's an all-powerful being that is watching us. And this is where the problem is. If you look, even within the house, if the parents are fighting and there's no children around, they'll continue. But as soon as a child comes into the room, what do? They stop fighting. They stop fighting. If they know that someone is hearing them, what do? They stop arguing. They stop fighting. Isn't it sad? We know for a fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always listening. We know for a fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always watching us. Yet we don't stop the sins that we commit. As soon as a child walks into a room, we stop arguing. Meaning what? Meaning that the sight, or meaning that the respect, I should say, that we've given this child, we don't even give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't fight in front of the child. Why? Or we don't argue in front of the child. Why? Because we don't want the child to think bad of the parents. We don't want the child to think bad of the parents. Yet when you sin, do you not stop, or why do we not stop and think, hold on a second, I don't want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to think bad of me? What's worse, my child thinking bad of me, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinking bad of me? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's worse, my child thinking bad of me, or the imam of my time thinking bad of me? The imam of my time. This is what we should be thinking. This is how we should act. Everything that we do, we should ask ourselves, hold on, the imam of the time is watching me. Will he be happy with what I'm doing or no? If he won't, I don't need to do it. If he will, then by all means do it. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The Holy Prophet himself, he says this was about Surah Al-Zilzal. And Surah Al-Zilzal is a very short surah. And Surah Al-Adiyat, inshallah next week, we'll go over Surah Al-Adiyat and the importance of Surah Al-Adiyat and its tafsir, because its tafsir is important also. Inshallah, I'm going to be here for the next, I believe, 4 weeks. And in those 3-4 weeks, these small surahs in the Quran, it's the same tafsir, Tafsir al-Burhan or Tafsir al-Nur al-Saqalain. There's nothing from my end. It's just the riwayat that are there. That's it. Today, it was just the riwayat that were there. The riwayat from Lady Zahra, the riwayat from the Holy Prophet. That was it. Okay. The next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, this is what I'm going to do. Tafsir of Quran, but the very short surahs of the Quran. The longer surahs, they require more time, and inshallah, if we ever get a chance, we'll do, or we'll start with the longer surahs. But Surah Al-Zilzal. After Surah Al-Zilzal, Surah Al-Adiyat. Surah Al-Adiyat, this surah, it was revealed for who? Imam Ali alayhi salam. Imam Ali alayhi salam. Next week, I want to speak about Surah Al-Adiyat. Why? Because the Holy Prophet himself, he says, anyone that wants to be considered to be a friend of Amir al-Mu'mineen, anyone that wants to live next to Amir al-Mu'mineen in Jannat, would habitually recite Surah Al-Adiyat. Continue, if you want that, then continue to recite Surah Al-Adiyat. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The Holy Prophet himself, he says that be in wuzu all the time. Be in wuzu all the time and do as many good deeds as you can. And the best of those deeds is what? Prayer. Why? Because it will be preserved on this earth for you. Meaning what? Whenever the Holy Prophet used to travel and he would stop at a place, he would do 2 rakat salat. Wherever he was traveling, if he would stop at a place, he would do 2 rakat salat. This is why. Because the Holy Prophet himself, he says that the earth will testify to the deeds that you've done. The more places that you pray salat in, then the more places will testify to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you were praying. The more places. So what does the Holy Prophet say? He says, be in wuzu all the time and do the best of the deeds. And the best of the deeds is prayer. And it will be preserved in the earth. And this earth acts as your mother. This earth, it acts as a mother. This is the reason in the Nahj Balagha when Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was going to the masjid. There was a man, he had just finished praying. And as soon as he leaves to start work, another man who considered himself to be an abid, he looks at someone else and he says, look, this is the world. This is the world. You know how sometimes some people, everything that is going wrong, they just put it on, oh, this is how the world is. No, that's not how the world is. That's how individuals are. This man, he said, oh, this is the world. Amir al-Mu'minin, as he was walking in, he gets really angry. And he tells him to be quiet. He goes, what do you mean by this is the world? What has the world done to you? It's you who does every bad deed on this world, and then you say this is the world? What has this world done to you? It gives you sustenance. It gives you housing. It gives you the ability to live. And when someone does something bad, you blame the world for it. This Amir al-Mu'minin says, this world is like a mother. This is what the Holy Prophet is saying. This world is like a mother. It takes care of you. You should look after it too. But the Holy Prophet, he says that this world is your mother. And there is no one in it who does a good deed or evil except that the earth will one day inform about that deed being done. About that deed being done. So everything that we do, one. Two, I don't see it anymore, I don't see it much here, but when Amir al-Mu'mineen says that this world is acting as your mother, should we not look after it the way that we look after our mother then? Should we not take care of it the way that we would take care of our mother? This is the only world we have. The only world that you and I are living in. After we die, we're gone, that's it. Other worlds will come, yes, creatures will come. But this is the only world we have. Garbage, for example. What can you and I do to make this world better? What's sad is that people know that the masajid are the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People know that these Husayniyas, they're for the sake of the Ahlul Bayt. But they won't treat these places the same way that they treat their houses. What do I mean? Would you throw garbage outside your house and not do it in a trash can? No, you'd put it in the trash can. So why is it that when people come to these masajid, when they come to these Husayniyas, they throw garbage on the floor? If your kids are ruining, or if they're running around in one of the rooms and you want them to be quiet, would you not tell them to be quiet? You would. If you see that they're messing something in the house, would you not tell them not to do it? So why don't the parents do that when they bring them to the Husayniyah? Why don't the parents do that when they bring the kids to the masjid? This is a house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are houses of the Ahlul Bayt. You should have more respect for this place than you do for your own house. Meaning what? This place should be more clean than your own house. If this is a house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're not in wuzu at home, then come to this place in wuzu. Come to this place clean. Come to the place smelling good. Come to this place as if it's truly a place where you want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not a place where you just want to gather, that's it. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I know I have about 15 minutes, but I purposely stopping right now because I want to do a question and answer too. I know this isn't the way Dad does it, but I want to do a maybe 15-minute question and answer and then finish this, because the last time we did question and answer, alhamdulillah, it was a while ago, but people actually liked it, and they said, you know what, we shouldn't have a lecture, we should just do question, and we can't do that. There needs to be some sort of lecture and then a question and answer for that. So what I'll do is, inshallah, we'll have my lectures, as you all know, they start on time, they end on time. That's it. I run on PST, American time. I don't run on Pakistani time. So it starts 8:30. It'll end by 8:30. That's it. It starts 8:30. It'll end 9:30. Sorry. Yes, that's it. I run on U.S. American time. That's it. So what we'll do is we'll do question and answer for 10-15 minutes. And then, inshallah, we'll end this lecture for today. Next week, the time will change, but I believe next week, the time for the dars is still 8:30. It's coming 1 hour back. Yeah, it's coming 1 hour back. I don't know if the time for the dars is going to change. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me, because whatever the time is, that's the time I'm starting. So it really doesn't matter to me. So that's up to the management to decide, you know, what time, because the hour is going back an hour. Next Thursday, I believe Sunday, it's supposed to go back. On the 5th, right? That's Sunday, yes. Sunday is going to be back an hour. So whatever the time is on next Thursday. Right after Maghrib? Right after Maghrib. Maghrib is going to be 5:30. Maghrib is going to be around 5:30. So 8:30? Okay. I start, Dua Kumil will be from 8 to 8:30. It takes about 20-25 minutes, that's it. My lecture time it was 8:30. I don't know what it's going to be next week, okay? But my lecture time will be, the time that gets posted, that's my lecture time. If it says 8:30, then think that is my lecture time. That is not when Dua Kumil starts, that's when my lecture starts. Okay, 8:30. Eight thirty is not Dua Kumil, 8:30 is my lecture. 8 o'clock, inshallah, 8 o'clock, 8:10 will be Dua Kumil. Any questions? वुज़ू का तरीका क्यों? अच्छा, तो एक दफ़ा वाजिब है, दूसरी दफ़ा, तीसरी दफ़ा बात ख़त्म. तो फिर एक दफ़ा तो वाजिब है, एक दफ़ा करना वाजिब है. हाँ, एक दफ़ा तो करना वाजिब है, बात ख़त्म. काफ़ी है, एक दफ़ा करना वाजिब है. हाँ, अच्छी तरह गीला हो. हाँ हाँ, और नाखून तक. All of your fingers, all the way to, that's why you need to have your nails cut, because the water needs to get underneath your nail. Okay? फर्क नहीं है ये. अच्छा, this is where the confusion is. नियत, this is where the confusion. आप मसाज हो रहा है और पानी जितनी दफ़ा आप डाल रहे हैं, ठीक ना? आप पानी 10 दफ़ा डालें, नियत पहली बार करें, पहली के लिए करें, एक बार, ठीक ना? आप दोबारा 10 दफ़ा डालें और नियत दूसरी के लिए करें, बस. अब तीसरी दफ़ा आप 10 दफ़ा नहीं डाल सकते हैं. हाँ, कर सकते हैं. No, you don't need to do that. कर सकते हैं. हाँ, you can put your elbow in, جو مسا جو ہوتا ہے ہاں اسی کی تو نیت ہوتی ہے. ہاں گیلا ہاں مس ہو جائے گیلا ہو جائے. نہیں آپ کر سکتے ہیں. ہاں بات کرنے سے وضو باطل نہیں ہوتا ہے. ہاں نہیں نہیں no, no, no. Just because you talk to someone while you're doing wuzu, it does not break your wuzu. You can talk as long as you know that you're doing wuzu, you have intention of doing wuzu, you can talk to whoever you want. But you have to make sure that you're doing every aspect of wuzu properly. That's it. ہاں ہاں اب ہاں 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 up to the joint. ہاں 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 ٹھیک ہے اس نے 3 رکعت پڑھ لی. جب امام رکوع کے لیے جائے وہ ٹائم ہے اس کے پاس. جب جب امام رکوع میں جائے تو پھر اس نیت کر کے وہ رکوع میں جائے. یعنی نیت عشاء کی نماز پڑھ رہا ہوں واجب قربتاً اللہ، یہ کہنا ضروری نہیں ہے. لیکن اب ہمارے یہاں بس یہی ہوا کہ ہم کہہ کے شروع کریں، ٹھیک نا. لیکن جب رکوع میں جائے ایک تکبیر کہے، وہ جو پہلی تکبیر جو ہوگی وہ تکبیرۃ الاحرام، پھر دوسری تکبیر کر کے رکوع میں جانا ہے اس کو. نیت کرنے کے بعد پہلی جو تکبیر وہ تکبیرۃ الاحرام ہے، پھر اس کے بعد جو ایک دفعہ تکبیر کہیں گے وہ رکوع کے لیے تکبیر ہے. ہاں اس کی ایک رکعت کاؤنٹ ہو جائے گی. ٹھیک ہے ٹھیک ہے آپ میت لائیں ہم کرتے ہیں یا لائیں یا کوئی بن جائے. نہیں نہیں no it is important inshallah we will do it. نہیں ہاں نہیں بہتر یہ ہے کہ آپ پھاڑیں. ہاں بہتر یہ ہے، ہاں بہتر یہ ہے کہ آپ پھاڑیں، ٹھیک نا. اب انشاءاللہ ہم کرتے ہیں. we will do that. ٹھیک ہے ٹھیک ہے ٹھیک ہے اوکے. That's fine. We can do that. No. There needs to be a ladies one and a gents. That's it. Praying while traveling. Praying while traveling. When you go out of your hadd taraqqus, now the hadd taraqqus, it depends on your marja taqleed, whatever he says it is. If it's outside the city limit, then it's outside. The mileage is the same, but where that hadd starts from, where that mileage starts from, that's different for the maraja. So wherever it starts from, once you go that 28 miles back and forth, then that's when your namaz becomes qasr. Okay? When your namaz becomes qasr, every 4 rakat namaz, you break it and you have to pray 2. That's it. Your maghrib and your fajr namaz, they're the same. There's no niyat, I'm doing qasr fajr namaz, wajib qurbatan illah. There's no niyat, I'm doing maghrib qasr. No, that niyat does not exist. You're doing fajr namaz, wajib qurbatan illah. You're doing maghrib namaz, wajib qurbatan illah. There's no qasr for fajr and maghrib. 4 namaz nahi, 5 hai. ہاں ہاں قصر پڑھتے ہیں. ہاں کہاں گئے تو ہاں کیوں بوتل لے کے جانا ہے؟ حالت کیسی ہوتی ہے؟ دیکھیے ٹیشو بھی نہیں ہے. نہیں اس کو کلین کرنا پڑے گا, اس کو پاک کرنا پڑے گا. جو باتھ روم جو سیٹ, اگر ٹوائلٹ ہے تو جو سیٹ پر ہیں اس کو پاک کرنا پڑے گا, پانی سے دھو کے آپ بیٹھ جائیں. ہاں نہیں, اگر آپ ٹریولنگ کی وجہ سے کوئی کہیں راستے میں آپ کو کرنا پڑے تو جا کے کریں, بس آپ پھر طہارت کریں. ہاں کر سکتے ہیں, بس طہارت کریں, کوئی مسئلہ نہیں ہے. ہاں مسئلہ نہیں ہے. نہیں قصر نہیں ہے. ہاں 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 گھومنے پھرنے جا رہے ہیں یا کوئی حرام کام کرنے کے لیے جا رہے ہیں تو پھر قصر ہے. ہاں بس صلی اللہ علیہ محمد وعلی محمد.
اللہم صلی علی محمد وعلی محمد. السلام علیکم یا نبی اللہ, السلام علیکم یا حبیب اللہ, السلام علیکم یا حجت اللہ, السلام علیکم یا رحمت للعالمین, السلام علیکم یا باعث الہدی ورحمت اللہ وبرکاتہ, السلام علیکم یا امیر المومنین, السلام علیکم یا صوب الدین, السلام علیکم علی ابن ابی طالب علیہ السلام, السلام علیکم یا بنت رسول اللہ, السلام علیکم یا فاطمۃ الزہراء سیدۃ نساء العالمین. السلام علیکم ابا عبداللہ حسین علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم مظلوم کربلا. السلام علیکم ابن رسول اللہ. السلام علیکم ابن امیر المومنین وابن سید الوسیین. السلام علیکم ابن فاطمۃ الزہراء سیدۃ نساء العالمین. السلام علیکم وارث اعظم صفوت اللہ. السلام علیکم وارث نوح نبی اللہ. السلام علیکم وارث ابراہیم خلیل اللہ. السلام علیکم وارث موسیٰ کلیم اللہ. السلام علیکم وارث عیسیٰ روح اللہ. السلام علیکم وارث محمد حبیب اللہ. السلام علیکم وارث علی امیر المومنین ولی اللہ. السلام علیکم ابن محمد المصطفیٰ. السلام علیکم ابن علی المرتضیٰ. السلام علیکم ابن فاطمۃ الزہراء سیدۃ نساء العالمین. السلام علیکم ابن خدیجۃ الکبریٰ. السلام علیکم صار اللہ وابن صالح والوتر الموتور. اشہد انک قد اقمت الصلاۃ وآتیت الزکاۃ وامرت بالمعروف ونہیت عن المنکر واطعت اللہ ورسولہ حتی اتاک الیقین. فلان اللہ امتاً قتلتک ولان اللہ امتاً ظلمتک ولان اللہ امتاً سامعت بذلک فرضیت بہ. یا مولا یا ابا عبداللہ اشہد انک کنت نورا فی الاصلاب الشامخہ والارحام المطہرہ لم تنجسک الجاہلیت بانجاسہا ولم تلبسک من مدلہمات ثیابہا. واشہد انک من دائم الدین وارکان المومنین. واشہد انک الامام البر التقی الرضی الذکی الہادی المہدی. واشہد ان الائمۃ من ولدک کلمۃ التقوی وعلام الہدی والعروۃ الوثقی والحجۃ علی اہل دنیا. واشہد اللہ وملائکتہ وانبیاءہ ورسلہ انی بکم مؤمن وبآبائکم محکم بشرائع دینی وخواتیم عملی وقلبی لقلبکم سلم وامری لامرکم متبع. صلوات اللہ علیکم وعلی ارواحکم وعلی اجسادکم وعلی اجسامکم وعلی شاہدکم وعلی غائبکم وعلی ظاہرکم وعلی باطنکم. زیارت مولا عباس علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم ابن امیر المومنین. السلام علیکم ایھا العبد الصالح مطیع للہ ورسولہ. واشہد انک قد جہدت ونصحت وصبرت حتی اتاک الیقین. لعن اللہ الظالمین لکم من الاولین والآخرین والحاکم بدرجک الجحیم. زیارت شہزادہ علی اکبر السلام. السلام علیکم ابن رسول اللہ. السلام علیکم ابن نبی اللہ. السلام علیکم ابن امیر المومنین. السلام علیکم ابن الحسین الشہید. السلام علیکم ایھا الشہید وابن الشہید. السلام علیکم ایھا المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن اللہ امتاً قتلتک ولعن اللہ امتاً ظلمتک ولعن اللہ امتاً سامعت بذلک فرضیت بہ. زیارت شہداء کربلا علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم یا اولیاء اللہ واحبہ. السلام علیکم یا اسفیاء اللہ وعبدہ. السلام علیکم یا انصار دین اللہ. السلام علیکم یا انصار رسول اللہ. السلام علیکم یا انصار امیر المومنین. السلام علیکم یا انصار فاطمۃ سیدۃ نساء العالمین. السلام علیکم یا انصار ابی محمد الحسن بن علی الولی الناس. السلام علیکم یا انصار ابی عبداللہ بابی انتم و امی طبتم وطابت الارض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظیما فیا لیتنی کنت معکم فافوز معکم. السلام علی الحسین وعلی علی ابن الحسین وعلی اولاد الحسین وعلی اصحاب الحسین. السلام علیکم محمد ابن علی علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم جعفر ابن محمد علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم موسیٰ ابن جعفر علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم علی ابن موسیٰ علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم مولانا غریب الغرباء. السلام علیکم معین الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام علیکم شمس الشموس انیس النفوس ایھا المدفون بارض طوس. السلام علیکم محمد ابن علی علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم علی ابن محمد علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم حسن ابن علی علیہ السلام. السلام علیکم مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان اللمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام علیکم یا خلیفۃ الرحمن. السلام علیکم یا شریک القرآن. السلام علیکم یا امام الانس والجان. اجل اللہ تعالی فرجک وصال اللہ تعالی مخرجک وظہورک ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد. اللہم کل ولیک الحجت ابن الحسن صلواتک علیہ وعلی آبائہ فی ہذہ الساعۃ وفی کل ساعۃ ولیا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودلیلا وعینا حتی تسکنہ ارضک طوعا وتمتعہ فیہا طویلا برحمتک یا ارحم الراحمین. اللہم صلی
No, add on to it. Yeah, if you give it to him, just wait.
Okay, I'll just bring over the picture.
Walaikum salam. Oh, walaikum salam. How are you?
Long time.
Huh? Yeah. How's everything?
Everything is good so far.
Yeah. How's school?
School is going great.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's Alma?
Alhamdulillah.